Welcome back to Fast Market here on the TD Ameritrade Network. Let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment. That's going to be Andy Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Andy.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Andy, we're talking Doordash. I kind of make fun of the people that use Doordash on a daily basis, especially the younger people here at the network. Just the premiums that you pay. But, what kind of data are you guys seeing? Because Uber Eats, I saw during their earnings event that they had a 12% increase in gross bookings as far as delivery goes of food. Are we going to see something like that out of Doordash? Because, I don't know, everything's open now, Andy. You don't need delivery.
Well, we don't need delivery, but we want delivery. We like delivery. We're addicted to delivery, I think, is the main story here. Yeah, you're right. Uber Eats put up really good numbers. And I think what's really interesting here is that Uber Eats put up revenue growth in that segment of, I think it was 37% revenue growth. So bookings were up, like you said, in the teens. Revenue really a big driver. We saw very similar numbers in LikeFolio data on the consumer demand side out of Doordash. We're seeing consumer demand up 36% year over year. When we look at the two compared to each other and kind of a line chart, the number of people talking about these two companies, Uber has the benefit of being also a mobility play, not just a delivery play. But we see a similar trajectory between the two. We think both are growing. We think both are in a very hot space with a good tailwind in terms of the way that consumers interact with each other and with these companies. We think they're very, very similar. And so when we look at Uber's report, I think what it did was set the bar very high for Doordash. And I'm not really sure that Doordash can meet that bar, because from a demand standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, I think Doordash is going to have a very, very good report. But what Uber did was they cut costs in such a significant way that they were able to deliver profitability. That's not something I think Doordash is going to be able to achieve. And when you go back to back like this with two such similar companies, two such similar growth trajectories, the last thing I think Doordash wanted to see going into this earnings call is their biggest competitor hitting that profitability mark, before they can. And I think that's going to be put a cloud a little bit over the earnings call as they move into the Q&A session. But I do think that both these companies are benefiting from a huge macro trend that only seems to be accelerating. And Doordash, a very good company that just now has a really high bar to reach if they want Wall Street to get excited after this earnings report.
Hey, Andy, it's Dan Deming here. Yeah, it's interesting because, I kind of did some research before I came on here. And, one thing I noticed that DoorDash clients, it said has allowed them over the last couple of years to reach so many new clients or new opportunities and expand the customer base. But I think the one concern, as you pointed out, and that's the thing that I'm focused on, is, the delivery expansion has really, it rocketed in the last couple of years as far as the ability to just reach a whole new client base. But at the same time, at some point, you got to think that expansion is going to start to slow. And what do you think the significance of the impact on a Doordash would if we see that expansion really start to tail off?
Yeah, I think, one of the big concerns you have to have as an investor or executive in either one of these companies is the idea that people are starting to run out of money a little bit. It's not as easy to come across those dollars as it used to be. You're starting to pinch pennies. And then to Tom's point earlier, you can go to the store and get the burrito for $8.95, or you can pay Doordash almost $14 or $15 to bring it to you. When you start pinching pennies, those differences start to really matter. And so I think that is a potential headwind for both of these companies that they'll definitely have to overcome, and they'll have to answer to in the post-earnings conference call, I think, in a really big way.
Yeah, Andy, it's not ever been a good idea to bet against the consumer. They will absorb costs for an extended period of time. I wonder, with inflation probably bottoming out, at least for the near term, gas, oil prices continuing to rise here over the last several weeks. When you look at this and you look at the happiness, is there maybe a breaking point where, hey, inflation's too high, or I don't want to spend 20 bucks on a burrito, I'll go walk and get it for 11 bucks. Is there some breaking point, and do you guys have an earnings score on this one going into the report?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a breaking point. I just don't think that we've reached it yet. You know, we see both these companies, Uber Eats and DoorDash, actually accelerating their growth in terms of the number of people talking about using their services. So for us, that's what we go by. And until we see that breaking point hit, we're going to stay somewhat long-term bullish on these companies. I do think going into this report, you know, if you'd asked me Monday, I'd have said we were completely neutral on DoorDash. But now that Uber has put out a report that puts profitability in the back of people's minds when they compare the two companies, I think the risk for DoorDash on this report is probably slightly to the downside. I just think it's going to be a tough bar for them to reach.
Is there, real quick, Andy, is there any difference between happiness levels between DoorDash and some of the other competitors? Because I know Grubhub, you get it with your Prime membership, I believe, now.
Yeah, the real difference is mostly just how much people complain overall. You know, this is one of those companies that if people are talking about it, it's generally a complaint. So anything over 50% we consider fairly positive. DoorDash barely gets over that bar. Uber gets over it a little bit better, but overall very similar across the board across all these companies.
Yeah, it reminds me of a little bit of an airline. You don't ever say anything until you don't like something about them. All right, great stuff. Great data as always, Andy. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.
Yep, you too. That's Andy Swan, co-founder at LikeFolio, breaking down the data. Dan, I wanted to get your take here on it. You know, up over 70% this year.